Okay, so you want to buy a crab boat. Sure, you've got a few $1,000,000. Maybe you watched Deadliest Catch and thought, hey, those guys make a fortune in a single season. How hard can it be? Here's the thing. The boat isn't what makes you money. The crab isn't what makes you money. What makes you money is a piece of paper. A government-issued quota that says you're allowed to pull crab out of the ocean. Without that paper, your $1,000,000 boat is a very expensive way to watch the sunset from Dutch Harbor, the main crab port in Alaska's Aleutian Islands. And that paper? It can disappear overnight. In 2021, Alaska shut down the Bristol Bay king crab fishery for the first time in 25 years. The next year, they shut it down again. Same year, they canceled Bering Sea snow crab, too. That had never happened before in history. 3 seasons. Gone. Hundreds of boats sitting at the dock, loans still running, insurance still burning, crew scattered to other jobs. By 2026, the fishery's technically back open, but the fleet that survived is half the size it used to be. So let's talk about what it actually costs to get in, how the money really works, and what happens when the ocean, or the government, decides you're done. If you're just dipping your toes in, you can pick up a used mid-size combo vessel for $300,000 to $1,000,000, 50 to 70 feet, steel or aluminum hull. These boats can pull crab pots, but they also do long line or trawl work on the side. Think of it as a Swiss Army knife that happens to float. Budget another $50,000 to $100,000 a year in maintenance, dry dock, and gear before you pull your first pot. Problem is, a boat this size won't survive the Bering Sea in January. You're limited to smaller fisheries, Dungeness, maybe some golden king crab in calmer waters. The money's decent, but it's not the money you came here for. The real game starts at $2 to $5 million. That's a full-size Bering Sea crabber, 100 to 130 feet of steel, the kind of boat you've seen on TV, Northwestern, Cornelia Marie, Time Bandit. Built to handle 40-foot swells and carry 150 to 250 crab pots at roughly $1,000 each. Right now, in 2026, it's a buyer's market. 3 years of closures forced a lot of owners to sell. Boats that were listed at $4 million in 2020 went for $1.5 to $2 million in 2023. If you know where to look, Dock Street Brokers in Seattle runs what is basically Craigslist for fishing boats, except everything costs 6 or 7 figures. You can find deals that didn't exist 5 years ago. But here's the catch. Buying the boat is like buying a taxi without a medallion. You've got the vehicle, you've got the engine, you can drive it anywhere you want, but you can't pick up a single passenger, or in this case, pull a single crab without the permit. That's where it gets expensive. A full package, boat plus quota, runs $5 to $12 million. The quota alone, just the paper, trades at around $19 to $22 per pound on the private market as of 2026. A large allocation might represent 60,000 to 80,000 pounds of crab. Do the math. That's $1.2 to $1.8 million in paper value sitting in a filing cabinet, often worth more than the boat itself. There's a reason guys in Dutch Harbor say they'd rather lose the boat in a storm than lose the quota in a policy change. The boat is insured. The quota isn't. So you think the business model is simple. Buy boat, catch crab, sell crab. More crab equals more money, right? Not quite. The real business model in Alaska crab fishing is quota economics. You're not buying and selling seafood. You're buying and selling the right to harvest seafood. And that distinction is worth millions. Here's how it works. Every summer, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game sends boats out to count how many crab are left in the Bering Sea. Based on that count, they set a number called the Total Allowable Catch, the TAC. That's the maximum amount of crab the entire fleet is allowed to pull out of the ocean. For the 2025-26 season, Bristol Bay red king crab got a TAC of 2.68 million pounds. That's it. Every boat in Alaska combined. Now imagine that 2.68 million pounds gets sliced into shares, like a pie, except the pie is the entire ocean's crab population, and there will never be more slices than there are right now. Each slice is called an individual fishing quota, an IFQ. You own a percentage. Let's say you hold 1% of the total allocation. That's about 26,800 pounds of crab you're allowed to catch this season. At a dock price of $26 to $30 per pound, which is where Bristol Bay king crab landed in the 2025-26 season, your 1% share translates to roughly $700,000 to $800,000 in gross revenue. If you're a larger player holding 3% of the total, that's $2 to $2.4 million for one species in one season. But here's the part that changes everything. You don't have to fish your own quota. You can lease it out. Just like a landlord rents an apartment, someone else takes the risk, goes to sea, pulls the crab, and pays you for the privilege. The going rate? 50 to 65% of the landing value. That means for every dollar of crab someone catches using your quota, 50 to 65 cents goes straight to you. Before they pay crew, before they buy diesel, before they fix a single thing on the boat. Now flip it around. What if you're the guy leasing quota because you can't afford to buy it? You go out, risk your life in the Bering Sea, land $1 million worth of crab, and $550,000 of that goes to someone sitting in an office in Seattle who hasn't been on a boat in 10 years. After fuel, crew, maintenance, and insurance, you might keep 15 to 25 cents on the dollar. This is why the smartest people in the crab industry look nothing like what you see on TV. Deadliest Catch shows you guys wrestling 800-pound pots in a snowstorm. It doesn't show you the quiet investors who own the quota, collect the checks, and never get wet. Discovery Channel turned the Northwestern into a brand. Captain Sig Hansen became a celebrity. At its peak, Deadliest Catch pulled over 3 million viewers per episode and ran for more than 20 seasons. It made old boats worth more than new ones because fans wanted to own a piece of TV history. But the show hides the real math. It never once mentions quota, never mentions lease rates. It shows you the danger and the glory, but not the spreadsheet that actually determines who gets rich. The real math says, the boat is a tool, the quota is the asset, and the best tools depreciate, while the best assets appreciate. February 11, 2017. The fishing vessel Destination leaves Dutch Harbor headed for St. Paul Island. Hundreds of crab pots stacked on deck. 6 crew on board. Standard run. They'd done it dozens of times. They never arrived. No mayday, no radio call, no warning of any kind. The Coast Guard only knew something was wrong when an emergency beacon activated automatically, meaning the boat was already underwater. What happened? Ice. The Bering Sea was throwing 50-knot winds and freezing spray. Somewhere between Dutch Harbor and St. Paul, an estimated 200,000 to 340,000 pounds of ice accumulated on the vessel and its gear. Combined with the weight of the pots, the boat went top-heavy past the point of no return. It capsized in minutes. The NTSB, the federal agency that investigates transportation disasters, found the wreck at 250 feet, resting on its side. All 6 crew were lost. The vessel was valued at $2.5 million. The Coast Guard recommended civil penalties against the owner for failing to provide updated stability data. Their report used 2 words that should keep every boat owner up at night. Preventable accident. The crew loaded the boat by the book. The book was wrong. 2 years later, New Year's Eve, 2019. The Scandies Rose is running crab off Sutwick Island. Captain Gary Cobbin Jr. is at the helm. His son David is below deck. 7 men total. Same killer. Asymmetric ice accumulation. The vessel's stability manual was inaccurate. The ice built up unevenly, more on one side than the other, and within minutes, the boat rolled and went down. 5 of 7 dead, including both Cobbins, father and son. 2 men survived, pulled from near-freezing water by the Coast Guard. The owners settled with the families for over $9 million, paid out of the vessel's insurance. The commercial fishing fatality rate in Alaska is roughly 30 times the national average. Not twice, not 5 times. 30. But death isn't the only way this business destroys you. Sometimes the government does it. October 2021. ADF&G announces the Bristol Bay Red King crab stock has fallen below the minimum threshold. Season canceled. You already heard this part, but here's what happened next. A year later, same announcement. Canceled again. And this time they canceled Bering Sea snow crab too. First time that's ever happened. The federal government declares a fishery disaster. Hundreds of boats are tied up in Dutch Harbor and other ports, loans running at $15,000 to $30,000 a month, insurance burning $10,000 to $25,000 a month. Crew with families to feed, scattering to construction jobs and oil fields. Quota values that peaked before the crash, down 40 to 50%. By the time the fishery reopened in 2023-24 with a tiny quota, half the fleet was gone, sold, scrapped, repossessed. One captain in Kodiak had $3.8 million in loans on his boat and zero income for 2 straight years. He sold in 2023 for $1.6 million, less than half what he paid. Walked away from crab fishing entirely. Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much money do you make if you own a crab boat in 2026? Option 1. You're the full package. Boat owner, quota holder, captain. You bought in heavy. $7 to $12 million total for a quality vessel, plus a 3% allocation of Bristol Bay king crab. Your share of the 2025-26 TAC, roughly 80,000 pounds. At $28 per pound average dock price, that's $2.2 million gross. Now subtract what it actually costs to run this thing. Fuel alone is $40,000 to $80,000 per trip, and you might make 2 or 3 trips in a season. Crew shares run $200,000 to $400,000. Maintenance and dry dock eat $150,000 to $200,000 a year. Insurance is another $150,000. Add it all up, $800,000 to $1.2 million in operating costs. Net profit, $800,000 to $1.4 million per season. If you also run snow crab, which had a 9.3 million pound TAC in 2025-26, you add a second season of income. Payback period, 7 to 12 years if quotas hold steady. Big if. Option 2. You own the boat but lease someone else's quota. Investment, $2 to $4 million for the vessel alone. You negotiate a lease for 40,000 pounds of king crab. Gross revenue, $1.1 million. But the quota holder takes 55% off the top. That's $600,000 gone before you start. After fuel, crew, maintenance, and insurance, another $350,000, you're left with $100,000 to $200,000. One bad season, you're underwater on your loan. Government closes the fishery again? Your income is zero, but your debt isn't. Option 3. You sell the boat. Keep the quota, let someone else risk their neck. You lease your 80,000 pound allocation to a hungry captain at 55% of X vessel value. He catches it, sells it at $28 per pound, and writes you a check for roughly $1.2 million. You don't buy fuel. You don't fix engines. You don't hire crew. You don't die at sea. You just own a piece of paper and deposit checks. The smartest crab fishermen in Alaska haven't touched a boat in years. In crab fishing, the guys who sold their boats in 2023 and kept their quota, they're doing fine. The guys who kept their boats and lost their quota, they're driving trucks in Anchorage.